Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have reached the final chapter of this trial where we must reflect upon the evidence presented and make a crucial decision. The life of another human being hangs in the balance, and it is our solemn duty to ensure that justice is served. The defendant is charged with the heinous crime of murder. While we acknowledge the absence of forensic evidence, we must not let this singular aspect cloud our judgment. The lack of DNA, fingerprints, or other scientific proof does not equate to innocence. Remember, the essence of our justice system lies in evaluating the totality of the evidence. Consider the testimonies of the witnesses. The defense may argue that the eyewitnesses were old or had obstructed views, limited vision, but these factors alone do not negate their accounts. Their testimonies were consistent and compelling. These witnesses came forward, despite their fears and limitations, to share what they saw. Furthermore, the circumstantial evidence paints a vivid picture. The motive, the opportunity, and the defendant's behavior after the crime all point towards guilt. It is our duty to piece together these elements as they form a coherent narrative that aligns with the truth. You have heard all the arguments, and now, as you deliberate, remember that justice must be grounded in reason and fact. Look at the totality of the evidence and fulfill your duty with integrity, giving justice to the victim and their family.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we stand at a pivotal moment where you must weigh the evidence presented and make a decision of profound significance. The prosecution has attempted to weave a narrative of guilt based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of witnesses with clear limitations. But our justice system demands more than conjecture and speculation. Let us address the core issues. There is no forensic evidence linking my client to the crime. No DNA, no fingerprints, no physical evidence whatsoever. In a murder case, the absence of such crucial evidence cannot be overlooked. It raises a significant doubt, a reasonable doubt, that must be resolved in favor of the defendant. The prosecution has relied heavily on the testimonies of witnesses whose credibility is questionable. These witnesses had obstructed views. One, self-admit Tingley, just doesn't like the defendant, and some are of an advanced age, their vision questionable as demonstrated during cross-examination. Their ability to accurately perceive and recall events is inherently compromised. Can we, in good conscience, convict a person based on such shaky grounds? Moreover, the circumstantial evidence presented is far from conclusive. It is based on inferences and assumptions, not on hard facts. The prosecution's narrative requires us to fill in too many gaps, to make too many leaps of faith. The prosecution did not establish a viable motive, the means for the defendant to commit the crime, nor any physical evidence placing my client at the location of the crime. The absence of such evidence speaks volumes. It is not the lack of evidence that should concern us, but rather the lack of credible evidence of my client's guilt. In this courtroom, the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. They must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Given the numerous uncertainties and the lack of concrete evidence, this burden has not been met. Therefore, I urge you to find my client not guilty as justice demands.
During this trial, you have heard of witnesses and heard arguments of counsel that the state did not utilize a specific investigative technique or scientific test. However, I instruct you that there is no legal requirement that the state utilize any specific investigative technique or scientific test to prove this case. Your responsibility as jurors is to determine whether the state has proven based solely on the evidence presented the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.